Good afternoon, everybody. I'm excited to be able to present this webinar to you all this afternoon, and I hope you find it helpful in maximizing your investment in GeoGraphix. Today's topic is importing data and making maps in GeoGraphix step by step. The goals of today's webinar are to make you aware of the range of well and image data available in GeoGraphix, expose you to some of the extensive mapping capabilities that we have put in GeoGraphix, especially some of the new capabilities we've added in the last couple of releases. And finally, to show you how to create an accurate geologic base map in 20 minutes or so. Now, Discovery is a big product. I could spend a lot of time, hours, many hours, talking about the software's capabilities in seismic interpretation, log interpretation with, and correlation with PRISM, our new geo-modeling package and geo-steering package. And in future webinars, we'll be discussing each of these areas in detail. But in upstream oil and gas, pretty much everything starts with a map. And in the next 25 minutes, we're going to make an accurate geologic base map and a simple geologic interpretation of the geology in Ellis County, Kansas, using data from a variety of free and vendor data sources. To begin with, we'll do a quick overview of maps and data in GeoGraphix. And then after that, we'll move on to the demo. We'll make a simple well layer. I'll show you how to hyperlink some information from online data sources to the wells on the map so that you could click on the well and then be able to navigate in your internet browser to that information online. We'll stream some culture, topo, satellite imagery from ArcGIS and the Web Map Services onto the map. We'll create a subsurface contour map of a highly productive formation in the area. That's the Arbuckle Formation. And the Arbuckle has produced a lot of oil. It's like 1 billion barrels of oil during the last 100 years. So it's very prolific. And finally, we'll do some production mapping with the new Engineer's Dashboard tool. Now, it would take a very long time to demonstrate how to import every data type that we can get into GeoGraphix, and I'm not going to do that to you guys. But I do want to list the breadth of industry standard data formats that we can import into GeoGraphix. We can import IHS 297, 298, AccuMap, Tobin maps, as well as our standard GeoGraphix import formats. Those are ASCII 2, ASCII 3, and ASCII 4. If you have IHS EnerDeck credentials, you can link to the EnerDeck server and import data directly from the EnerDeck server. Some other ways you can get well data into the system include the Microsoft Spreadsheet importer utility, which we ship with GeoGraphix, and I'll demonstrate how that works later in the webinar. And you can also import well data with our DEFCON tool. With DEFCON, it's possible to create your own control files for importing well data stored in your own proprietary formats. So if it's something we don't have a canned import for, you can create your own control file for getting that data into the system. Other formats that we support include ZMap for grids, LES for well logs, all of the standard formats. And now in addition, we support a variety of image formats. You may not know this, and some people do and some people don't, but shape files are our standard format for mapping in Discovery or in GeoGraphix. We import shape files. Every map is exported. Every layer on every map is exported as a shape file. It's our native format. Really, GeoGraphix is built, well, GeoGraphix mapping is built almost totally on Esri technology. When you install GeoGraphix, you also install Esri ArcGIS 10 runtime. Many of our mapping features are built on the same technology that is used in Esri's ArcMap application. So the good news about that is, if features become available in ArcMap, we can get some of those features into GeoGraphix also. And if you use Esri's ArcMap, you'll know that it's a very robust GIS application. With the embedded Esri technology, you can import OIR files, so the Esri layer type format, the shape files that I mentioned before, and you can stream map data directly from ArcGIS Services and Web Map Services online. In addition, you can display layers from SDE, or Esri's Spatial Data Engine technology. We also import more than 15 image file formats, including JPEG, PNG, GTIFF, GeoTIFF, GIF, Mr. SID, the list goes on. A full listing of these and all of the formats that we support are available in the GeoGraphix documentation. Now let's move on to the mapping. Really, our DNA for GeoGraphix is mapping. GeoGraphix, a company which was started well over 25 years ago now, and it became known as a mapping package. So one of our core strengths with GeoGraphix is good mapping, sort of in our DNA. We really probably have, soup to nuts, the most complete mapping package available in the upstream oil and gas industry on Windows. Really, it's a 3-in-1 package. First, it does all the conventional petroleum mapping, including contour mapping, thematic mapping, bubble mapping for production with proportional conditional pies. We have 10 gridding algorithms, including kriging, available. We also are able now, with the addition of Esri's technology, to display maps from Web Map Services and ArcGIS Map Services. And finally, we have photo montaging capability, where you can insert different types of image data into your map and build a presentation quality map, which can then be saved and exported and printed in most common image formats. Gridding is done with our IsoMap package. It really does produce detailed maps, subsurface maps, of really the most complex faulted geologic areas. Like I said, you can have 10 gridding algorithms to choose from, including kriging. Fairly easy to use, in fact, very easy to use in most cases, to get a really high quality subsurface map on your screen quickly. Now let's talk about the GIS integration. The latest version of Discovery, GeoGraphix Discovery, is 2012.0.1. That version is compatible with Arc version 10.0. You can use any of the service packs, so with the exception of up to 5. So there's 5 service packs. You can install any of those service packs with ArcGIS version 10. So it's compatible with all of them. You can also, in this version, and that's the 2012.0 version, you can work with ArcGIS 9.3 also. So it is compatible with that version of Arc. If you haven't upgraded, highly recommended that you do so. There's a lot of new feature functionality in that we've added the last couple of releases, and I think you'll be really pleased with what we've added, and we'll show you some of that later on in the webinar. Now, there's a couple ways that you can use Esri technology. One is you can just directly import layer files and CAD files through the GeoGraphix GeoAtlas import wizards. The second way that you can display map data is connect to an external data source and then simply stream that data onto your map. There's a lot of online public and subscription data out there that are hosted on Web Map Services, and the big advantage to using those services is that the data is very voluminous. Think satellite data or Google, right? And it doesn't have to be hosted on your servers. It's also always updatable. So as soon as it changes, and you open up your map, you see those changes immediately. So let's talk about each of these. Let's talk about the Web Map Services. A Web Map Service is simply a web service that serves up maps and static images. You access a Web Map Service through a simple web URL. A URL is an acronym for Universal Resource Locator, and it's the string that starts with a HTTP, and it appears on the top of your web browser. That's all you really have to do is type in that particular URL into GeoGraphix to access online imagery. Think how Google does it. When you go to Google Earth, if you use that program or any of the satellite viewers, you can zoom in, but the satellite imagery covers pretty much the whole Earth. You're just looking at a little piece of it. Like I said, these WMS services, Web Map Services, are readily available through subscriptions, such as those offered by MapMart, IntraSearch, and Spatial Energy. Now, let's talk about ArcGIS Map Services. There's a lot of ARC out there. There's a lot of things named ARC, and it's often confusing. So what actually is the difference here? What is an ArcGIS Map Service? Well, it's a web service it's a special web server, actually, that Esri sets up that serves up maps instead of HTML documents. So whereas in a regular web server you could serve up Web Map Services, on an ArcGIS map server, if you have Esri in-house, you can serve up maps using that particular technology. So what's the difference? Well, unlike Web Map Services, with an ArcGIS Map Service, you're usually able to retrieve some useful information from the map using the information tool in GeoAtlas or in ArcMap. Often your GIS folks, if you have ARC in-house, will publish land and lease layers as map services from an ARC server on your company's network. If they do, and you have that capability in your company, you'll be able to access those internal maps directly on your Discovery map, right in GeoAtlas. Simply by same thing. You type a URL directly into Discovery, browse out, select the maps you wish to view. So that's really the difference. The ArcGIS Map Service simply allows you a little bit more ability to figure out what's on that map. It's not just a static image like a satellite image. You can actually click on the map in some cases, not every case, it depends on how you set it up, and get some information. So, for instance, if it was a lease, you might be able to click on that lease, have a little dialog come up and say who's the lessor, who's the lessee, and when the lease expires, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, now we'll get on to SDE. This is another interesting technology from Esri. It's been around for quite a while. It's a core component of Esri's ArcGIS for server technology. SDE spatial data, basically it's the points, lines, and polygons, as well as the attribute data associated with those points, lines, and polygons, is all stored in a big relational database, such as Oracle, SQL Server, Informix. Now, if you have ARC set up that way, the big advantage of using SDE is that feature class information, and that's just sort of Esri speak for the attributes associated with polygons and lines, is available through the database. So then you can actually apply a theme to your maps or symbolize your maps in some way. So, for instance, if you wanted to show all of your leases, in addition to getting some information about the lease, you wanted to color code all your leases yellow, for instance. You could do that with SDE, but that would not be possible if you were just to publish maps through with an ArcGIS Map Service. The disadvantage of using SDE, if there is one, is that it really requires a powerful relational database to store the data, and there is both ARC and database administration associated with it. So some companies do use it, some companies don't. It is a non-licensed feature now in GeoGraphix. You don't have to buy it. It just comes with the product. And if you have credentials, basically takes a password and a user ID, you can browse out to all the layers that your company has available on the server and stream those directly into GeoGraphix also. Now I talked about layer import. We do import and export everything as a shapefile in GeoGraphix, but we're also able to import Esri layer files. Layer files are an interesting file format. They tend to be very, very small. When I say import, we do import them into GeoGraphix, but the files themselves really contain links to data sources. So a single layer file might actually contain a link to an ArcGIS Map Service. It might contain a link to a web map service. It might contain a link to a shapefile. It might contain a link to a geodatabase. These files also contain the CRS information, the coordinate reference system information, as well as any symbolization that you want to do or thematic that you want to do on the layer themselves. And finally, new way to get data into the system is the engineer's dashboard. The engineer's dashboard is a Microsoft Excel add-in. It's a macro that we ship with GeoGraphix. Using this macro, you can actually display bubbles and pies, generate new zone attributes, and import them into GeoGraphix directly from data that is stored in a spreadsheet, for instance, in Microsoft Excel, or data that's linked with Microsoft Excel. So, for instance, if the data is in an Aries database, for instance, or your own proprietary production database, Microsoft Excel has great tools for linking into that data, and then you can use the dashboard to create bubble and pie maps. The nice thing about using this tool is that you don't really have to import the data into the system in order to map it. The data can stay on your own system or in your spreadsheet. So with that, we'll move on to the demo. But first, Jennifer, are there any questions that have come up? We'll do a short break for questions, and then we'll move on with the demo.
There is. We have a user that is asking if there is support for a non-Esri GIS system like Quantum PostGIS.
No, not unless
they're exporting as a shapefile.
Yeah, they could certainly export as a shapefile and then get the data in that way. I'm not sure if Postgres actually supports Spatial Data Engine, SDE. If it does, that would be a way to do it, but you would have to have the Esri SDE piece available, even though, and I think actually Postgres does support that. But other GIS systems, no, we don't support them, and they're usually, the other GIS systems are open source systems. So we tend to use Esri pretty much exclusively in GeoGraphix.
Okay, thank you. And I think there are some users that are not being able to hear you very well.
Okay, I've turned up my volume to the max, so okay. I can I'll go ahead and talk louder if I have to. I hope they can hear me better now. Any other questions?
I can hear you well.
Okay.
Not at this moment.
Okay. At the end of the demo, we'll also entertain questions and answer some of your questions. So if you have any, just feel free to type them into the chat window. Or if you want to save them till later on, we'll answer them at the end of the webinar. Great. So anyway, that's been a pretty thorough overview of maps and data in GeoGraphix. We'll go ahead and start with a demo. Today we'll be looking at an area of the Central Kansas Uplift in Ellis County. And we'll be mapping the Arbuckle Formation. It's an Ordovician dolomite. Like I said, it's produced a lot of oil, over 1 billion barrels since 1912. The Arbuckle is overlain unconformably by the Simpson sandstone and the Lansing, Kansas group. They're also both big oil producers. Underlain by Precambrian basement, actually. Hydrocarbon trapping in the Arbuckle is both structural and stratigraphic, and economic reservoirs often occur in up-dip porosity and impermeability pinch-outs. So that's some background information, and I'll go ahead and start with the demo. Okay. Go back here. Now the first thing I'd like to do is just get a little data, well data, into the system and make a simple map. Like I said, I'll go ahead and bring up WellBase here. If you go into File, Import in the WellBase application, you can see all the well data types that we do import. They are extensive, but in this particular case, I'm going to use the spreadsheet importer to get the data into the system. All of this data is free data, actually. All of the well data, the TOPS data that we'll be importing this afternoon. The Kansas State Geologic Survey is a wonderful organization. It actually probably the best survey in the country, and it has pretty much all of Kansas's well and petroleum production data available online. So I just downloaded some of that data, and we'll go ahead and we'll import it in. We're going to use the spreadsheet importer, so we'll just go out to an Excel spreadsheet with that data available. And I'll go ahead and open it up. And you can see that the Excel spreadsheet import tool is now available. That's that little yellow line on the top row in the spreadsheet. Up here, you can see that we can import all of the data types through Excel that are available in Discovery. And to import the data, you simply have to map each column to a data type in Discovery. So I'll go ahead and real quickly show you how to do that. This obviously is well ID, so I'll go ahead and map it to well ID. And then we just go on and on. Now, this column is well name, so I'll go ahead and map it to well name. That's really all you have to do. Once that's done, and you have to make sure that certain data that forms the key part of the record is available, and you are importing it, simply go to the little gas symbol up here, select well header. If you already have data in the system, you can allow updates to existing wells, and you can select the coordinate system. So for instance, if the location data of the wells are in GeoGraphix lat long NAD 83 or NAD 27, you can select that, and it will automatically be transformed to whatever your project coordinate system happens to be. So we'll just go ahead and bring that data in and transfer the header data in. It doesn't take very long for header data. There's only 250 wells here. And now we'll go to the map and make a well layer. Very easy to do. Create layer, create a well-based layer. I'm just going to create a simple well spots layer. All of the data available, pretty much every data type and every field in every data type is available for posting around your well spot, either bottom hole location, surface hole location, or along your well bore. Right now, I'll just post operator, well name, well number, and the TD. So we'll just call it well spots, webinar, I don't know, 6, I've done this a bunch. And we'll hit OK. Doesn't take very long. This is going to be 6,000 wells in this project. So we're just going to roll on through here and take a look at what that gives us. So as soon as the layer is made, you can see the layer shows up. Let's zoom in here, though, and take a closer look. Lots of overposting, lots of problems. But we do have our layer display attributes capability. just about any piece of data that you put on a map can be manipulated in some way. In other words, the font can be changed, the size can be changed, the spacing can be changed. All of that is available through layer display attributes. So I'll just real quickly show you that. So you can see that we can change the height of this, of all of the text fields. We can change the color. We can add underlining, strikeouts. So we can put a border around anything you'd like. We can even put call-out lines around all of your data. And we can make a much better looking simple well map. So I'll cancel out of here and show you that. I'll close down this. And this is WellSpot's webinar 3. That's just a simple well layer. And you can see that this is a much better looking layer. There's less overposting. I changed some stuff around. And now we have something that we can begin building a base map with. Okay, now that we've got our base map, our simple well map, I'd like to hyperlink or associate some of the wells in your map, in fact, all the wells in your map, with some online sources of data. So let me show you how we do that. It might be a little confusing at first, but actually it's quite easy. So in fact, it's extremely easy. I'm going to go back to WellBase, and I'm going to go and bring up the spreadsheet importer again. And instead of importing well data, I'm going to import hyperlinks, URLs. And I'm going to associate those URLs with every well inside the database. Now, why would I do that? Because when I go to a well on my map, I'd like to right-click and say, you know, I'd like you to take me out to the Kansas State survey, and I'd like to see all the data available for that well. See how we can do that. Let's take hyperlinks here. All this data is available on the survey website. But, you know, Kansas isn't the only one where there's the survey where data is available. You could do the same thing for the Texas Railroad Commission, Colorado State Oil and Gas Commission, you name it. All of them have free data available. So we'll just take a look at what's out there. Well, that's pretty interesting. All I really did, and I'll take a look at the URL here, and if you type in one of those URLs, this URL, you'll notice that every single one of them has a Kansas State ID associated with it. That's just the way the Kansas, they don't use API numbers, they use their own IDs. And so when you want to go and browse out to their information online, you would have to use one of these URLs, basically, and append the Kansas State ID. It seems like a lot of work, but it really isn't. All I really did was take the URL that I need, and I have just, through Excel, created a little function that appends the Kansas ID to all 16,000 wells, or 15,000 wells in this project. I'll go to Add-ins, select Documents, and import the data. Now this will take a couple minutes, but I've made a layer already. And after I get that data in, I can go ahead and I can update my layer. And you will notice that we have a new button here, a new checkbox in Well-Based Layer Create. Well-Based Layer Create, for those of you that aren't familiar with GeoGraphix, is where all the layers are created that you want to see on your map. All the well layers that are created that you are going to visualize on your map. Well, if you want to add those hyperlinks, you can just check the hyperlink button here, create the layer, and we'll just quickly zoom in. Select one of the wells, right-click, and go to Data Attributes. There's that URL. Let's go ahead and select it. And immediately, we can see all of the data available for that well online. Now, you can do this for online sources of data. You can do it for your own data. If you have a SharePoint site, for instance, works the same way. Import all the URLs associated with the well into GeoGraphix, and then you could do the same thing for your internal sources of data. And it could be well schematics. It might be certain production information, whatever it happens to be. You can associate as many URLs with a well as you want, and you can access those URLs and browse to that online or internal source of information, either on the map, or if you go into WellBase and you select the little documents here, type, data type, you can just double click right here, and there you go. So now I've basically associated hyperlinks with all my wells, so I don't have to, for each well, have to browse out to the Kansas website each time I want to get some updated information for that well. Now, let's keep going here. We've got some wells. The layer's looking pretty good. Let's do a little bit more with it. Now, we talked about Web Map Services, and we talked about ArcGIS Map Services. So let's import one of each. And I'll show you how to do that. It's extremely easy. You go to File, this is the mapping application, GeoAtlas. You navigate to File, Import, Esri, ArcGIS, and select, if it's a Web Map Service, Web Map Layer Connect. Now you'll notice that there's a place on top, an edit box on top, a combo box, where you can type in the URL. All the URLs that you type in are saved. Those are pretty ugly URLs, but this particular one is from MapMart's cloud subscription service. So what happens when I say get layers? I see all the layers that are available on that Web Map Service. I do have NATE satellite imagery available, USGS topographic maps. I also even have Basemaps available. So I'll go ahead and select, what do I want to see? Maybe the NATE satellite image data. Give it a layer name. Webinar 6. And select Next. Now, you are required with a Web Map Service to enter also the CRS, the Coordinate Reference System of the Web Map Service. How do I know that? Well, 99.99% of the time with a Web Map Service, it's going to be geographic lat long, WGS84. So they're pretty much all WGS84 geographic lat long. Now, some of the services, the subscription services like MapMart and Spatial Energy, actually provide the data in NAD27. And since so many projects are set up with the NAD27 data, that makes it very convenient. You don't have to do the transformation, or the system doesn't have to do the transformation. But go right here, select geographic lat long, WGS84. I'll go ahead, and I already imported that layer, so I'll cancel out of here and show you what it looks like. I guess it would just be Webinar NATE. I'll go ahead and turn on the layer. And you should see very quickly all the satellite data. Now, this is satellite data for the entire Earth. Well, not the entire Earth, it's NATE, so most of the U.S. is covered. So it's just literally that easy. If you buy a subscription, they'll give you a user ID and a logon. Go out to MapMart's website, put in the user ID and logon, give me the URL, and you can just copy out the URL, and that's your URL for seeing the satellite data or anything else that's available from the service. There is the ability with any of these services, let's just see here, turn things on and off, for instance. There's quite a bit of information out here. Don't know, I haven't taken a look at all of it, but Sublayers are available. You can turn what you want. If you want to see a USGS DRG, you can see that. Data, bin maps, culture data, all that's available through these services. But remember, they are static images. Basically, they're just an image that gets displayed on the map. You can't really interact with it in any way. Okay? Now, let's import some ArcGIS Map Service data. Now, this is the second thing, the second type of online imagery that we have available for import, actually for streaming into GeoGraphix. This is ArcGIS Map Services. Basically, you need Esri for that. You need an ArcGIS server, and it's that web service that is set up through your ArcGIS server. Many companies, some of which companies you work for, already have this set up internally. One place that just set up a new ArcGIS Map Service, one company, is IHS. IHS has a map service available now that allows you to peruse or figure out all the permitting information. So it's the well activity. If you subscribe to well activity through IHS, you already have this, and I'll show you how to use it. Go to File, Import, Esri ArcGIS, and instead of selecting our Web Map Service Layer Connect, let's select ArcGIS Server Layer Connect. Very similar dialog. I already have a service set up. Now these services are password protected, as you may suspect here. So I'll go ahead and type my credentials in. Do that real quickly, and just say get layers. Now, if you do have activity available, well activity, in other words, where are the new permits? New permits been pulled the last 3 days, the last day, and the last 7 days, the last week, the last month, the last 6 months. All that information is available and continually being updated. So very useful information to have. You can select that, give it a layer name, and then you can import that data, basically connect to that data as a virtual layer. I've already done that, as you might expect. And I'll go ahead and go to my layer extents, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So let's take a look. We have some data there. If we drill down a little bit, you can see that what I'm seeing here is the symbols in green are permits that have been issued in the last 2 to 7 days in Ellis County, Kansas. And the permits in purple are permits that have been issued in the last 30 days. So if I want to actually get some information about those new permits, I can use the information identify tool in GeoGraphix. And I'll just go right over that little piece of that little symbol, and I'll select OK. And all that information about that new permit becomes available. So I can know what type of well it is, if it's a development well, the company, the filer, who filed for it, pretty much all the information, when it was last filed, or when it was filed. And all that information is here. So when I mentioned earlier that getting data from an ArcGIS server gives you a little bit more information, this is the type of information that you can get a hold of if your maps and data are stored in an ArcGIS Map Service instead of a Web Map Service. This is actually pretty cool because if I open up this map tomorrow, I might see new symbols available. And so the map is always being updated because as soon as you open up the map, the software goes online, and connects to the service and brings down the new information. Basically streams in the new information for you. So it's a good way to keep maps always up to date. Okay, so we've gone over the new web mapping services and the new ArcGIS mapping services. What else can we do? Well, obviously we can make subsurface structure maps. Very easy to do. I did import, before this webinar, the tops for the Arbuckle Formation through the spreadsheet loader. All that information, all those tops were available also online. Just downloaded them via the internet and imported them into GeoGraphix. So if I want to make a nice contour map, I just hit contour here in the application. And I'll go ahead and just add that data to my map. So I'm going to make a subsurface structure map of the Arbuckle, top sub C. And I will pick, I think I need an Arbuckle actually. And you can select the sources, that basically those sources are in source hierarchical order. So it will only select for that well the top level source, or the most important source, and ignore all the rest of them. So I'll cancel out of here. And once I've done that, I'll just hit OK. And I'll go ahead and read the records in. And I'll show you how you can select all of the information, all of the parameters necessary to build a contour map. That'll take, there's a lot of information here. It's about 6,000 wells. See a little histogram here with a distribution available. There are 2,089 points that we're going to use to create our grid. Hitting next, you'll see that you can select the gridding algorithm that you would like, the search method, your grid spacing. You can change the smallest feature radius if you'd like. All of this is user customizable. You can also even use the simplified defaults, which creates a pretty good contour map for you without having to go through these steps. And if you hit next, we can select color fill contours. You can go ahead and, if you don't want color fill contours, you can use a color density map. You can use a color fill grid algorithm and basically create the map that way. You have full control over the color palette that you would like to use. Cancel out of here. And I've made one of these layers already. Take a look at it. And that is the Arbuckle group layer right here. Now you'll notice there's a lot of little red dots here where these wells are, where the producing wells are. It sort of shows you that in the right on the edge of the structure, where it's a little higher, and then the highs, the anticlines, although this isn't really an anticlinal situation. You'll see that we have producing wells. So this is when I said that was the up-dip porosity, where you tend to get a lot of production, economic production. You can sort of see that in the contour map. We'll zoom right in. Turn that off. So now we've got a nice contour map made of this particular subsurface formation. What else can we do? Well, I got a lot of production data into the system, and the production data was actually vendor data in that case. There's a lot of vendor data available. You can bring it in, again, to the spreadsheet loader. If you have an IHS subscription, you can certainly get it that way through 298. Drilling info, exports, and ASCII4, you can get the data in. So many, many ways to get production data into the system. And I'm going to do a little production mapping and bubbling. Now I went ahead and created a new well-based layer. I'll just show you how to do that. Layer. And I will create a well-based layer. And you'll notice that all the production is available here also. So if I wanted cume, I think I just selected cume oil volume. I can drag that over. Select my producing zone, or all producing zones if you want to. I don't really see the need for that, so we'll go ahead and select the arbuckle, finish that up, and create the layer. Once I create the layer, that data is now in the database, and it's available for display. But also very, very easy simply to create a new bubble layer from it, and I'll show you how to do that. So once that data is in, and I just went ahead and created that. So we can go to Layer Display Attributes, and you'll notice that we have bubble symbols and thematic available. So if I go into Layer Display Attributes and select Bubble Symbols, you can see that it's very, very easy to create a bubble map. I selected that cume oil volume off the well-based layer. You can color ramp any way that you want to. You're able to view the data available. You're able to select the range of data available, ramp up the color, ramp up the size, change the number of intervals. All of this is basically a very, very robust way to create a bubble map. And pies also. So pie maps work just as well. Cancel out of there. And you can see that there's a wide range of data. This is historical production. So some of these wells are historical wells, but they have been producing for a very long time, or they were very prolific when they were first drilled. We'll go in here and take a look. Oops. There we go. So we can get some nice bubble maps on there. But since this is just historical or cumulative production, you know, it's not really giving us a good understanding of what's happening right now. So let's go to the engineer's dashboard, and this is the final thing I want to show you today, is how to use the new engineer's dashboard tool to do some bubble mapping. So same thing. We'll go into, actually I'll shut down Excel here. And we'll bring Excel back up. There's Excel right there. And when you bring Excel, when you actually invoke Excel, after you've installed Discovery, you're going to notice in the newer versions that there is a new ribbon available in Excel called the GeoGraphix Engineer's Dashboard. That ribbon, again, is just an Excel macro. It's written in a special language called VBA that Microsoft has used in order to create macros in the Office application tools. So we went ahead and did this. So what does this thing do? Well, like I said before, really what it does is it allows you to go ahead and use the data inside of Excel, inside of your own spreadsheets, or data that you can link to from Excel using the data ribbon here. And then basically Excel has a huge number of data types that we can link to. We have a nice demo online showing you how to link to Aries data, which is stored in an Access database, for instance. And once you do that, you simply open up the spreadsheet. I'll go ahead and do that. And you will see something like this. Well, not right away. What really happened here was, this is all my data. This is my spreadsheet data. And this will be your spreadsheet data. So basically, there's just spreadsheet data, whatever it happens to be. The only restriction is that you must have those columns named. So in your spreadsheet, those columns must have a name, and there must be one column with a well ID in it that matches the well ID inside of your project. There's no way really to get around that because we need the location information to put the bubbles on the map to begin locating things on a map. Generally, you're not going to have, or most people don't have, lat longs associated with PUDs or reserve estimations or production data. Sometimes you'll have that information available, but oftentimes you're going to have to match up data inside the spreadsheet with data inside the GeoGraphix application using the well ID. It doesn't have to be an API number, by the way. It has to be a well ID, and there has to be a location inside of GeoGraphix associated with that well ID, a lat long, most often, so we can actually put the data on the map. So what you do is you create a template, and you tell the system, this is the template name, this is the column that I want to be the well ID, this is the category, and then I'll show you what that means in a second. This is the value I want to map. So it could be oil cume or gas cume or PUD or probable or whatever it happens to be. And these are the columns in my spreadsheet that I'd like to filter on. So I'll go ahead and once you do that, you can open that template and then browse out to the data source, whatever data source it happens to be. Open up the template, and immediately what's going to happen is you're going to get a view inside of Excel like this. Now, for those of you that are really familiar with Excel, you'll probably recognize this as a pivot report. For those that aren't so familiar with it, possibly not. But pivot reports are extremely powerful tools because they allow you to slice and dice your data pretty much in any way imaginable. You'll notice here in our original spreadsheet, before we actually created a dashboard view from it, all of the data here is monthly production data. But, you know, I don't want to see monthly production data. It's not going to do me very much good. So what I was able to do is take all the monthlies in group. And before, it was just months. So this is the way the data initially came in. And I can actually start at a start date and end at an end date. If I can select OK. Oops, that's not what I want. Let's try that again. I want to go years and quarters, for instance. I now have a view of all the production for every well that I've imported in my original spreadsheet by month and by quarter. I want to do it a different way, for instance. I can certainly do that. I can ungroup everything, go back to months. If I want to group it back, and I'll just group it here by years. So now I can see the production by year for every well in my spreadsheet. Just a way to manipulate the data. This is really the power of Excel. Excel is sort of like a it's like a Swiss Army knife for data. It lets you do an awful lot of things very, very easily that would be very difficult to do if you were just trying to manipulate the data some other way. It would take a very, very long time. With Excel, especially with the dashboard here, it's very easy to do. So now that we've done that, well, what can we do with this thing? Well, like I said, we can take the data in Excel and start mapping it directly on our map. So I'm going to turn off my bubbles here so you can see. And I'll go back and I'll bring up the bubble. I want to bubble by date. So really what I'd like to see is just the cumes for 2011. So what's been happening recently in the area? So I'll just select 2011. I got one, I do have a way to just go to see a histogram. It looks like I have one well that is just absolutely enormous, with 149,000 barrels last year out of the 6,000 wells that I have in this project. But I'll reduce that down, and I can reduce the range to something different. I can increase my bubble size. That's very easy to do. Change my color. Green is a good color for oil. We'll use that. You can change the number of bubble intervals if you'd like. Set your transparency. Do quite a bit with the tool. Pretty much everything that you can do with the tool in Discovery itself. This little tool is actually, it's a dialog that is built right into Excel with the dashboard. So I'll hit apply. And what it's going to do is generate a bubble maps for me for production in 2011. So I'll go over here, and there we go. So this is 2011 production. You can see that we have a wide range of production. Just zoom up here. We do have some labels available, some labeling available, but this isn't actually a layer yet. This is just bubbles that are being drawn on your map. So we're not saving it as an actual shapefile layer. If you do want to save, for instance, 2011 production as a shapefile layer, you can certainly go ahead and do that just by hitting Create Layer. And if you want to, I'll just call it Webinar 2011 Production, Oil Production. And I'll hit OK. And now that bubble map will become a layer. And it'll become the active layer on my map. So if you look here in the layer selection dialog, you can see that you now have an actual layer available. So you can store that with your map and hit OK and say save this map. Next time you open it up, that's a shapefile layer, and that's really how easy it is. So with that, guys, I'm going to stop right there, and we'll review a little bit what we did today. And really what we did was we imported some data, imported some well data, created a basic well-based layer. We hyperlinked some information to that layer. We were able to, let's close this down, import or basically stream satellite imagery directly onto your map. We were able to access IHS's servers so we can stream new permits that were permits in the last 7 days, last 30 days, so you can see that on your map also. In fact, most of these layers aren't really in your system. They're just being streamed in. All the layers here that you see that are in yellow, they're really just virtual layers, but they can be saved with your map. Now, if you lose your internet connection, you do lose the layers, and they'll have to be, well, you don't lose them, they just don't show up. But the next time you have an internet connection, they do show up. So, but anyway, that is the end of the webinar today. I hope you enjoyed what we had to offer, and I will open it up to questions. So, Jennifer, has there been any new questions in the last 20 minutes or so?
No, not at this time, Scott. Not that would be pertinent to this webinar.
Okay, well, if there are any questions, let us know, and you can learn more about GeoGraphix and the MapMart subscription services, and we do resell MapMart services. So if you do want a subscription to online satellite data or whatever, you can certainly get in touch with your GeoGraphix sales rep. I'm sure they'll be happy to talk to you all day about it. Or if you'd like to test drive GeoGraphix, you can go to www.lmkr.com GeoGraphix Test Drive, and you can test drive the applications directly from the internet. If there are no more questions, we'll wrap it up there, and thank you very, very much for attending the webinar today. I hope it was productive and informative for you, and it helps you maximize your investment in the technology that you've bought. Thank you very much.